Okay, well, welcome everybody to this session on the valuation of picture postcards for the Judges Training course. From the outset, it's worth saying that this is the new kid on the block in terms of an FIP class. It's had a fairly fast track record, and I think both Australia and New Zealand can hold their heads high in World Philately for getting picture postcards up onto the FIP stage. 2017 was when Bernie Beston asked me to prepare a discussion paper for Finlandia, went to the FIP board, and within 2 years we saw picture postcards as an experimental class firstly in China, then in Singapore, followed by London, New Zealand, and at the 2022 Congress, it was made to be a full FIP class. So it had a fairly quick track record. If you go to the FIP website, you'll still see the picture postcards are listed down on the bottom right-hand corner there as an experimental class. Well, they're not. They're a fully fledged FIP class, and they probably should be moved across to the left-hand side with the shrevs and guidelines for all the other classes. But be that as it may, it is a fully fledged FIP class. I also need to acknowledge Jeff Long for handing me this presentation, which has got the latest and greatest included in it. I've made a few modifications myself. It was prepared for a judge's course in Wellington weekend before last, but apparently they didn't get there, or I don't know whether the course actually went ahead or not, but Jeff didn't get there. So you're getting a few changes that are coming along in the guidelines, but not there yet. But I think you need to be aware of them, because by the time you become judges, they're probably going to be in place. So the FIP special regulations and guidelines, it's important to note that no radical changes have been made to the new guidelines. So what you see on the FIP website and the APF website are the current ones. I don't have access to the drafts, but in the body of this presentation, you'll see the changes that are planned to be made. The most changes are clarifications, purely making best practice part of the new guidelines. The actual shrevs, and I'm sure in your previous presentations you're aware of the shrevs and the grevs and all those acronyms. So there's been no changes made to the shrevs. It's only to the guidelines, and they're really much minor in nature. So changes to the evaluation criteria for picture postcards. The idea and plan, 10 points, and treatment, 20 points, making up 30, is remained unchanged. The next one's 35 points, was known as knowledge and research. It probably is in all of the other classes. They've added personal study, knowledge, personal study and research, and they've rebranded. In picture postcards, we break those 35 points down into 15, which was for subject knowledge, and 20, which was for cards knowledge. Now, subject knowledge has been rebranded as thematic, and knowledge has been rebranded deltiological, which is the word for picture postcard collectors. Deltiology is the hobby. Condition 10 and rarity 20 remain unchanged, making up 30, and presentation 5 remains unchanged. So it's only in the knowledge, personal study and research area that there are some changes that are being made. The definition of a picture postcard. Now, a lot of this text has just been lifted purely out of the shrevs and the guidelines for picture postcard class. And no doubt, if you haven't read them, you go back and read them after the presentation or before you're judging a picture postcard class. So the picture postcards themselves, they can either be used or unused. It doesn't really matter, because you're showing the picture side of the card, not the other side of the card. Postal history information isn't relevant in a picture postcard class unless it provides some direct information relevant to the subject matter. It could be to do with the photographer, the publisher, the producer, the printer, or whatever, and or it has some aspect to the thematic knowledge of the exhibit itself. And there's a couple of examples there where you may be able to glean some information that's going to assist you in your write-up, whether it's an earliest recorded postcard by a particular photographer or publisher, and it may help date the image that's on the picture postcard. And in the case of topographical it may be the first when a building was being erected, so you can date it to the actual time of when that was occurring. Now, the last comment there is interesting because this is experience that's been showed by judges when they've been judging picture postcard exhibits, that some exhibitors believed that they were expected to show philatelic knowledge in a picture postcard exhibit and show some stamps, postal rates, cancellations, even routes, and all that sort of thing. But you're not looking for that in a picture postcard exhibit at all. There are other FIP classes that are relevant for that information. At this stage, and Bernie's going to be talking about Maximaphily after me, you don't put Maxi cards in a picture postcard exhibit, and you don't put picture postcards in a Maxi exhibit unless the picture postcard has been turned into a Maxi card by the adding of a stamp and a relevant concordance postmark. There's a picture postcard class is purely for postcards with a picture on them. Now we'll start to look at the criteria in a little bit more detail. We'll first look at idea, plan, and treatment. And of course, when you first start out with an exhibit, you're looking for, once you've got your material, you're looking for a relevant title for your exhibit. So the Shrevs or picture postcards have got these two statements in there, that the title and plan must be presented on the introductory page, title page, whatever you want to call it, and that the title must mirror the content of the exhibit in the best possible way. One small change to the proposed new guidelines, and incidentally, the guidelines can be approved by the FIP board. They don't need to go to Congress, apparently. They've just put in the additional text, which mirrors the Shrevs, in that it says the title must mirror the content of the exhibit in the best possible way. Perhaps I should say that we're fairly thin on the ground as far as judges are concerned at FIP level. We've only got two that are qualified to judge picture postcard class. That's Jeff Long from New Zealand and Sita Rita Laxo from, I think she's from Sweden. And they've both presented briefly, one was in New Zealand in Auckland, that was Sita, and I think Jeff presented in Jakarta, Indonesia just recently on these proposed changes. There are others in the pipeline. I'm one of them, whether I get a Guernsey or not. I think maybe South Korea, who knows. We need to get some more picture postcard judges at the FIP level. FIAP is obviously another area where we need to have recognised picture postcard judges as well, and of course at national level in our various countries. So here's some examples of titles, and the questions here is, do these indicate the content of the exhibit? A rant for nationalism. Any comments? That's all you're given. A rant for nationalism. Do you think that would cover what you're expecting to see in an exhibit, be it 1 frame or up to 8 frames?
I think it's the subtitle.
Defined.
It's fairly short. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Next one was King Edward VII, the man who defined an era. It's getting a bit more detail in a title. Incidentally, you can have a title and a subtitle. I've done that with some of my exhibits, and there will be some examples later on showing a title with a subtitle. Port Elizabeth, a compendium of postcards.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that should fit the bill. The American Great White Fleet Voyage of 1907-1909. I think that one covers pretty much everything you'd expect to
Very
see.
specific.
HSBC, building the bank since 1865. You need to see, well, would you have cards back in 1865? We'll have to wait and see an exhibit, wouldn't you? And Paul Finkenrath, 1897 to 1910. Obviously, about a certain person and his date of birth, date of death. What I guess Jeff's getting at there is think about your title. Does it encompass the whole exhibit from a good start, a nice middle, and a good ending? And it's most appropriate for the exhibit itself. The plan. Once again, these statements are quoted straight from the special regulations, the SREVs. The plan must be presented on the introductory page. So that's what you're looking for as judges, is to see a plan on the front page, title page, introductory page, whatever you want to call that, first page of the exhibit. The plan must show the intention and the structure of the exhibit. And I guess this is more of explaining to the thematic side of things, is your main sections and subsections of the exhibit are showing the structure and the logical development right throughout the exhibit. And if you can demonstrate personal creativity, knowledge and research, you'll get some bonus points. The proposed guidelines don't have any change, but they do have that text. Idea and plan will be evaluated according to the correspondence between the title, the plan and the development of the story through the whole exhibit. Here we've got an example, and this is one of, I think it's Jenny Long's, a study of New Zealand picture postcards. And this is the plan from off of the title page or the front page. So there are seven sections. There is a description of what is covered in each section, and on the right hand side it shows the page numbers. So this is an exhibit which was presented in London 2022, and guess what? It scored 10 out of 10 for idea and plan. And you might say, why? Well, the first thing is that it's not a frame by frame structure. In other words, section 1 is frame 1, section 2 is frame 2, and so on, so that they fit nicely within 16 pages, frame by frame by frame. And you'll see the page numbers lap over in various ways. The chapter headings give a development of the title. And the page numbering it makes it clear so that you can go straight to the page and see where that section starts. And obviously, there's titles on the pages that mirror the plan on the front page. And the final point is that looking at the page numbers on the right hand side, the whole exhibit seems to be reasonably well balanced in that no one section is a lot larger and dominates the whole exhibit compared to other sections in the exhibit. So to score 10 out of 10 can be done. Now, I don't know whether title page has been covered, well, it probably is covered in every FIP class to a certain extent, but there are 6 key aspects that are now expected to be seen on a title page of any exhibit, irrespective of what FIP class it's in. So for picture postcards, it's the same, that there is a title that clearly indicates the content of what you're going to view. So through the front shop window of your exhibit, whether it's the title and maybe a subtitle. An intention statement is what it's referred to, and it's not War and Peace. It's just a succinct statement in a paragraph or two of what the exhibit is all about. And as you can see there's 2 paragraphs at the top that covers the intention statement, followed by the plan and structure, which you saw on the previous slide, which includes the page numbering. So for ready reference for the judges, because you haven't got a huge amount of time to study and judge each exhibit in the frames. An interesting postcard to engage the viewer. Now, I wouldn't put a rare card on a title page because it's not going to earn you any extra bonus points. You might have it in the body of your exhibit, but certainly an interesting postcard that is relevant to the overall exhibit if possible on your title page with some notation underneath. This one's got a key to differentiate the story from the technical information, which we'll come to later, and how we're suggesting that people do that through their knowledge, personal research. And now a new requirement is that how you're going to show rarity, scarceness or rarity. That statement needs to be on the title page as well, and then followed through, you flow that through your exhibit. And then a bibliography or references, which is not to be probably more than 4 or 5 your key references. So they're the 6 things that as judges should be looking for on the title page of an exhibit. Moving on to treatment, 20 points. Special regulations, once again, a couple of extracts from there. Treatment must be according to the title and plan, and each picture postcard must have a connection with the topic. So you don't want any rabbits out of the hat or something that is from left field that doesn't fit nicely within the scope and the subject or the topic of the exhibit. Once again, there's no changes in this area in the proposed new guidelines, except that you'll see these words mentioned as regards treatment, that the choice of items and where they are placed within the storyline and the text in relation to the item, so that they're all consistent and fit nicely together. The variety of the material that is on show is important. And also under treatment, printing method and the printer publisher is equally important. It's not, it's throughout the whole exhibit, not necessarily against each card. For example, if you've got a similar printing method on, say, half of the cards in the exhibit, the most appropriate way to handle that is to put on the title page that unless otherwise annotated, cards in this exhibit are collar type, for example, and then those that are not collar type, you would have some annotation together with the cards explaining what printing method has been used for them. Now, these next comments have come from Henrik Moritzen on treatment, and this is an ex-postal history seminar. And you think, well, we're talking about picture postcards, but I think these are very relevant to picture postcard class as well. Basically, probably every FYP class. Is there agreement between the title, the plan, and the content of the exhibit? Does the exhibitor tell a well-connected, structured, complete, and balanced story in the exhibit and on the pages? Is there a close connection between the story and the material shown? And does each item help progress the story/subject? And does the story/theme flow smoothly from page to page and item to item? Let's hope that the exhibit's been mounted page by page correctly in the frames. Here's another one. This one is William Thomas Wilson, which got Jeff Long a large gold medal. They're all real photographic postcards from this particular photographer and postcard publisher from Auckland. And you'll see his intention statement is only 2 lines. And if I was critical, I would say probably he doesn't need the word which, because it doesn't actually read perfect King's English these days. But anyway, there's an intention statement, not taking up much room. And then the next part is his plan. He's got 11 sections. This is an 8-frame exhibit. So the top half of that slide is from his title page, and then you've got an example from page 81 in his exhibit, which is in section 7, the first page, talking about Cassie Richards, who happened to be his girlfriend and worked for him. Now, in this particular exhibit, Jeff's got main sections and subsections, which he calls running headings. So the first page of a particular section he's got the heading in red, and then where that continues on, it's moved to black, and then he's got on the right-hand side the subheadings of the various, I guess, photographic processes that have been used to produce real photographic postcard production. So that's an example of how he's used a main heading and subsection headings running through his exhibit. Moving on to knowledge, now personal study and research. This is a formal division of the 35 points, which was previously allowed for 15 points for subject knowledge and 20 points for card knowledge, as you can see now rebadged as thematic and teleological. This section of the guidelines has been substantially reworded. I actually haven't seen the rewording, but it's obviously the intention is to make the evaluation more precise, I guess, have more clarity and give more, and then hopefully be able to give more detailed feedback to the exhibitor. I think as last I looked, I couldn't see them on the FIP website, but I suppose because they're not set in stone yet, that's why they're not there. But I think I probably should ask Jeff if I can get hold of a copy of them, because I'm not too sure when. Well, there will be Congress in China, won't there, Glenn? So whether that'll come up for discussion there or not, I'm not sure. So the 15 points for previously for subject knowledge, and once again lifted out of the special regulations and guidelines. The text must contain essential information about the subject. Knowledge can also be demonstrated through the choice of material, and also can be shown by use of material which has a topical aspect that may have been discovered or developed by the exhibitor. So any personal research or knowledge that you find, blow your own trumpet, put it in there for the world to see, and particularly for the judges to see. The teleological knowledge and research is 5 points more. That's 20 points, previously called technical or card knowledge. And once again, the Shrevs say that research is a prerequisite for knowledge of the topic and the picture postcards. And this is demonstrated in a brief text in connection with each picture postcard. Knowledge and research about the postcard shows a wide understanding of technical knowledge in relation to the exhibit material, which may include the publisher, the photographer or the artist, the printer, the production method used, which could be collotype, chromolitho, photolitho, real photographic, could be silk. There's a whole range of different production methods that have been used on picture postcards. Distribution method, and sometimes very hard to find out, but the period of printing or usage. And that's where, if cards have been postally used, you might be able to get earliest known usage of a card, which may be relevant to your exhibit. So the teleological knowledge should preferably use a different font to the well, say technical knowledge or subject knowledge. What I do in my picture postcard exhibits is I use Arial, and I use Arial 11 point for the thematic come subject knowledge, and I use Italics 10 point for the teleological knowledge. And I don't overdo it in terms of letting the text overpower the actual cards. The cards need to breathe and be able to be the main point on the page. If you get good at wordsmithing, you can always say the same thing in probably half to two-thirds of the words. Original photographic archive material used as the basis of a production of a picture postcard will be rewarded. Could be artwork that was done for a might not necessarily be photographic. It could be done by an artist. Some of the comical cards have sort of all been hand drawn. So if you've got any original material, that will score you some extra points by having that in your exhibit. Your teleological knowledge should be demonstrated across the exhibit rather than necessarily for each postcard. That's what I said before. If the majority of the exhibit, and of course Jeff's was all real photographic postcards, so you wouldn't want to expect to see real photographic postcard mentioned underneath every card in his exhibit, would be covered on the title page. Technical information should extend beyond that printed on the postcards. You'll get some information from off the back, usually either the front or the back of the postcard, but we're looking for other technical information which comes with experience, and referring to some good textbooks that give you the printing processes and methods that have been used, which aren't necessarily mentioned. Collotype's usually one exception that is mentioned on picture postcards, but other printing processes and techniques aren't. Here's an example of half a page showing one postcard, and the deontological information is shown there on the right in blue italics to distinguish it from the storyline, which is now your thematic or subject knowledge in black print. But could this technical information be extended beyond what is on the card? Well, you try and extend it beyond what is on the card by, and as it comes with experience, you can pick up using 30 times magnifier the printing processes. With some of them you're looking for dots, some of them you're looking for stipple, which is dots joined together, and raw photographic is obviously the easy one to be able to identify. Now, what if the card doesn't have much information? Now, you'll see here they've reproduced the first two lines of text, actually reproduces exactly what's up the right-hand side of the card. Now, I went looking for the cross, and I've actually found the cross over here. It's just in front of it. It's very hard to see, but that's obviously where the origin of the fire started. Now, many cards don't have any information about photographer or publisher or dates. Don't tell the viewer, and for viewer you could read judge, what you don't know. And here you'll see they've said photographer, unknown, publisher, unknown, date of issue, unknown. The only thing they've told you is that it's got a divider back and the printed method is letterpress half-tone block. So some exhibitors have a template with, photographer, publisher, date of issue, whatever. And because they can't find that information, they say not known or unknown. Well, I wouldn't do that. I would just put down the relevant information that you have been able to glean from the card, and that will differ from card to card. So you might know the photographer in one instance, you might know the publisher in another instance, you might know the printing process. We should know the printing process in most instances, but don't shoot yourself in the foot by putting down what you don't know. Here's another example from Jeff Long's exhibit, and I was sort of reading through it. I noticed he needs a T in Wellington, but we won't take off a mark for that. He's found out that it was the text there in italics is what's written on the card, but he's found out that David James Aldersley, photographer, had a firm in Wellington from 1902 to 1929. So that's showing personal research that he's obviously had to go and look on the internet or in a library or whatever to find out. Here's another one, which is you've got your subject or thematic knowledge at the top and your deontological / card knowledge at the bottom. And there's some further information there about Muir and Moody publishers. The New Zealand people on Zoom tonight would be well aware of Muir and Moody, who were prolific issuers of picture postcards, and some detail there about what he did in 1908. All adds up to getting you a higher score. Condition, 10 points. And there's probably no surprises here, but obviously you're looking for best condition possible, that the picture postcards are free from bends and tears, haven't got rounded corners, they're all complete, there's no bits missing or no pinholes. So you're aiming for the best condition possible. And so you would expect that if you're showing modern cards, that they should be in perfect condition as compared to early cards from the golden era of picture postcard collecting, back the first part of last century, first 25 years, may have faults, particularly if they've been through the mail, and so there's what I call a trade-off between condition versus rarity, which we'll come to in a moment, which is 20 points. If you've got modern cards, you expect to score high in condition, but not necessarily high in rarity, and vice versa. If you've got very early cards, you'd expect to score maybe not so high in condition if it's less than perfect, but you'd expect to score higher in rarity. Rarity 20 points. Now, how do you determine whether a card is rare or not? It comes with experience. The more cards you look at, the more websites you look at, such as eBay and Delcomp. Incidentally, there's over 50 million picture postcards on Delcomp as we speak. Questions that you should be asking as judges is, how difficult do you believe it would be to duplicate this exhibit? Now, of course, the exhibitor's going to know and should be telling you what cards are rare, with a statement on the title page, and then annotating them throughout the exhibit. And some real photo postcards may be close to unique because they're only produced in small numbers. And then, of course, the survival rate on top of that, there may only be one or two still in existence. And even some printed picture postcards can be difficult to find, particularly if they were popular and they were used a lot, and then most people didn't keep them, so they got chucked away. So the survival rate is what determines, obtainability and rarity. Picture postcards showing details with people and I guess scenes are more and transportation are more important than just general views. And the golden age of picture postcards were often printed by several publishers in numbers of variations. So if you can get two similar postcards of the same scene, I've seen an excellent exhibit then and now of street corners where how the buildings have changed over the years from way back when, and then in the modern era. Must have taken the exhibitor a long time to get the relevant cards, but a great exhibit. So any of the original printed ones should be treated as originals, but any modern reproductions you need to describe as such, and I wouldn't go overboard in an exhibit with modern reproductions. You should be showing the originals rather than the reproductions. Now, to some comments you hear in front of the frames from the exhibitors when you're giving some constructive feedback. You judges should know what's rare, or the exhibitor says, "Oh, but everything in my exhibit is rare." It's cost me an arm and a leg. Well, that doesn't necessarily translate into rarity. But since rarity is worth 20 points, wouldn't it be better for you to explain, or ask the exhibitor to explain to the judges which of your items are rare and why? So not only a rarity or scarcity statement on the title page, but when you're annotating a card in the body of your exhibit as rare or scarce, some words to say why, because it could be only one of only two cards cited in 20 years of collecting, might be an appropriate statement to make. But it's the exhibitor should know because they've collected a particular subject for a recent period of time. Doesn't take quite so long these days with the internet that it did before the days of the internet. But in terms of acquisition, you can easily determine what cards are harder to find than others. How rarity will be shown in the exhibit should be shown on the title page. We've mentioned that before. That is a new requirement. So just a few other examples. How do you know which items are rare? This one is of a guide molly from Wakawariwa near Rotorua, and one of only 3 postcards made in a photographer's studio with a Maori portrait known to a William Mayne, who was author of many books about New Zealand postcards, after sorting through thousands of Maori picture postcards. So probably safely say that that's a pretty rare card. So once that information is known, if you've read it in a book or whatever, put some appropriate annotation with the card in your exhibit. Instalment cards were meant to be sent one at a time, and then obviously to the same person, and then put together to make a picture. I've seen a lovely exhibit of instalment cards where they had to cut the whole frame. It was a one-frame exhibit. They had to cut the whole frame by car on a great big board and mount it into the frame, into the display frame as one sheet, because of the size of the instalment cards in their place. You just couldn't use pages as such. Here's an early 1905 real photo postcard showing 3 German princesses, published in small numbers. So that would certainly be annotated as a rare card, and it would need to say things like it's printed there in text to justify making that claim. Now, I don't know who found this one, or it must have either been Jeff or Jenny, but this is the earliest recorded New Zealand picture postcard, dated 4th of January 1899. And they've been able to ascertain, obviously, through records that it fitted in between Post and Telegraph Department's postal safety postcards and before the Department of Tourism and Health postcards in 1902. They've even gone further with the annotation at the bottom, which is your technical knowledge. Okay, it's printed using collotype process. The photographer and publisher is not given, but that they've researched, and research has shown that it was published by a Lewis Hotop. So, and the message on the cards in German. Incidentally, the early cards with the undivided back, the rule was that you only put the address of the person you're sending it to on the back of the card, and on the picture side, in this case, a smaller image picture was room for where you could write your text. Now, these cards are entirely permissible to put in picture postcard exhibits. What you're looking for is that there's no blotches or ink spills or scruffy writing or whatever. It doesn't detract from the actual image of the card, but that's how the rules were way back then. Pre-1905, it did vary by a year or two in some countries, and those cards are quite acceptable in a picture postcard exhibit. Advertising cards were usually giveaways, and the numbers were kept low. This is a novelty hold to light card showing a map of Australia. If you hold it up to the light, you have to take my word for that. But it's got 2 holes in it. So would you show it? Well, if it's the only one you've got and it fits in with your exhibit, yes, you'd have to put it in till you get a better one. Silk cards. There's a whole range of silk cards from obviously the First World War. The scarcer ones, a lot of them just say, you know, thinking of you, or to mother, or whatever. But the ones that were for the various regiments are more highly desirable, especially if you know RWK was obviously for the Queen's Own Royal West Kent Regiment. That's showing more knowledge as well. And that one's in pretty good nick. As far as reference books are concerned, if you're you're judging a picture postcard class, you've received the title pages. You may have received the synopsis as well, which is allowed up to two pages of synopsis by the exhibitor. There's nowhere near as many reference on textbooks as there are for the philatelic classes, but there are some around that are quite good. As David Cook's book on Picture Postcards of Australia is quite a good reference book if you can get your hands on one. It's out of print now, but it's got a good section in there on the printing processes and techniques. Depending on the subject or the title of the exhibit, what I've tended to do in recent times is go to the internet and go to Wikipedia. It's amazing on Wikipedia. You'll usually find 6 or 8 pages about the particular subject of a picture postcard exhibit to help you, and then we'll give you an idea of what you should expect to find within the exhibit in terms of subject matter and cards covering the particular topic. But because there's often no catalogues like there are for stamps or scarcity ratings related to the subject that you're viewing, rarity is often a matter for your own knowledge and experience. So give the exhibitor the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully they've written up rarity or scarcity on the title page and shown it throughout their exhibit. They've annotated undivided back cards as opposed to divided back. Some of the cards, just by looking at them, you'll see that if they're pretty old as compared to modern cards, the old 3.5 by 5.5 format. So a summary of the proposed changes. As I said at the outset, the shrevs haven't changed, but according to Jeff, he and Sitter formed a subcommittee to review the shrevs and the guidelines. That he's saying that they may yet be simplified, but that would need a Congress support for that to happen. But the guidelines themselves, of which there's been some changes we've gone through, they can actually be approved by the FIP board themselves at a FIP board meeting. So in summary, the guidelines being amended or clarified. Philatelic information generally not required. This is in a picture postcard exhibit. Description of rarity expected on the title page, and the split between thematic, which used to be subject knowledge, and teleological knowledge, which used to be technical or card knowledge, is there and is easily identifiable within the exhibit. As I said, choose a different font or use italics for one, or different colours, or however you want to do it, so that it guides the judges. They can actually see, and then they know which relates to the 15 points and which relates to the 20 points for the judging. And then finally, which is the same in every FIP class, is presentation with 5 points. Should be able to score 5 points if things are done right. And it's the same as all other FIP classes. It's the overall viewing impression of the overall exhibit in the frame. Stand back and have a look whether it's 1 frame or up to 8. How tidy is it? Cleanliness, and neatness, not off sort of going downhill or updale, clarity and balance. The text and the layout is there to complement the cards and let the cards breathe. Don't go overboard with verbose text. Don't choose too small a font. It's especially hard for us that are getting on in years and are short in stature to read that top row. And that's where the title page is as well. Avoid page congestion. So in other words, don't cram too many cards on a page, and avoid 1-card pages. That's the same as avoiding 1 cover pages in other FIP classes. And I've said subject and card knowledge, but obviously for that, read thematic and teleological knowledge easily distinguishable on the pages. And is the overall presentation innovative? Have they chosen a clever way to show their topic to the viewer? Have I gone for time, Glenn?
I think you're right on the money, David. So if you stop sharing, and then people can
ask how do I do that?
Question. So up the top right-hand side, it should say stop
share.
Share. Yeah. So if you stop that.
Has that stopped it? No.
No.
Not on the.
Not on your PowerPoint presentation. Just go all the way up to the top of your screen.
Yeah.
It should be stop sharing.
Yeah, that's
stop share.
There you go. Beautiful. All right. So does anyone have a question for Dave? First of all, Dave, that was an excellent presentation. I've given it myself, but I think you actually know the subject far better than I do. So well done. And well done to Jeff Long for putting that presentation succinctly together, because over the period it's been developing, and I think now it's starting to make sense on how we should exhibit and how we should judge. So picture postcards. I do have a question, but I'll open it up to the floor first. If anyone else wants to ask you a question, David.
I've got one, David, and it's one I thought I knew the answer to, but it wasn't covered, so it might be worth asking. And that is the old chestnut of the back of the postcard, you know, the philatelic part, if you like, which from going to some seminars overseas on picture postcards, I now understand is totally and utterly and completely irrelevant, except for the few odd occasions that you might want to just point out the back. And yet you make a statement of, you know, you might have the earliest known usage. That's almost, to my way of thinking, contradictory. If you start talking about usage, you start talking about the cancellation, the actual postage date. And I don't see how that's at all. Well, I just find the two statements contradictory. So
Yeah, personally, I would steer clear of any philatelic knowledge in a picture postcard exhibit, full stop.
Yeah.
Then you're on safe ground.
David, I have a short one. I've always struggled with picture postcards in identifying the printing process of the card. Are there any books published on how to identify these?
No. Well, there's sections in books that cover printing processes and techniques. The late Michelle Rowland wrote a reasonably good article, probably a little bit too technical. I think you need to start sort of just with the basics. That was reproduced in the Postcard Pillar, which is the New Zealand Postcard Society magazine. So that should be freely available. Jeff Long will be able to lay his hands on that. What we've run in South Australia is we've run workshops, and we've actually put the postcards up on the boards, and we've got the magnifiers out, and we've gone through the various printing processes. It comes with experience. It's not easy, but you can get there. And if there's an odd one in your exhibit that isn't annotated correctly, the judges are probably not going to pick it up anyway, because you rarely see a judge walking around with a magnifier. They probably should.
I'd be guilty.
David, could I just ask you, I come across fairly often early postcards where the sender is probably the person responsible for taking the original photograph, actually identifies the scene with text handwriting on the front of the card. How are they generally viewed? You know, when the face of the card is you know, probably in some people's view damaged by the use of the text or handwriting.
Yeah, you're talking about an early undivided back card that's got text on the front.
Yeah.
They're quite acceptable, especially in if you're putting up a classic picture postcard exhibit. You expect to see quite a few of those. What some judges have told me to avoid is where, particularly French and Belgian cards, where they call them cote de vue. They actually put the stamp and the postmark on the picture side of the postcard, and they're not a Maxi card. That's where they put the stamp and it's been postmarked. They're sort of frowned on to a certain extent. Try and replace that card with one that hasn't got a stamp and a postmark on the front. But I don't know I don't think many marks would have been taken off for that. But the text is perfectly admissible on undivided back postcards on the front of the card, as long as it does not markedly detract from the appearance of the card itself. I mean, especially if they've written all over the picture itself, I'll forget it. Don't put the card in the exhibit.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good questions. David, I've just got one final one. So I've got a scene with 5 or 6 different people that have produced it. Can I overlap that to just fit it into one page since it's the same scene?
You could. I've never seen a judge ask for a page to be taken out of the frames in a picture postcard exhibit yet. I know they do that in philatelic exhibits, but the question is, overlapping the cards, is it hiding a corner that's missing off of a card, or is it the card really bent on that side, or whatever? I certainly wouldn't overdo it, but if you wanted to do it, say on one double page in your exhibit, yeah, I'd say go for it. Yeah, probably. I've never done it, but I know some exhibitors have.
All right. Thank you very much, Dave. All right. So I think we've actually got a good program, because having postcards and maxi cards and to work out what the two differences are on the same session is very good. So I'm going to ask Bernie to share his screen, and hopefully we can do it reasonably quick. But before he starts his presentation, I think most of you know Bernie Beston. He's been involved with Philately probably as long as I've been alive, and he's been mentoring a lot of people, me included. He's a previous president of FIP, which is really the pinnacle of what you can do in this. He's probably got a CV of exhibits that would go 5 or 6 pages long, not 1 or 2 like most of us. So he's dabbled in every class and everything. So well done, Bernie. So if you can share your screen, we'd love to hear your presentation on Maximaphily.
All right. Now the problem's going to be, how the hell do I do it? All right, done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to say is welcome everybody. The second thing I'd like to say is Stephanie Bromser, if you could send me your CV, I'll send it to CloudStrike, because obviously they need your expertise, all right? Okay, tonight I'm going to talk about Maximaphily and how you judge it. Bear with me, because I haven't done this for some time. It's the smallest class that you'll ever see. Your chances of getting to judge it are probably remote. Apart from perhaps a Firo, maybe Luxembourg, you're unlikely to ever see more than 5 exhibits of Maxi. One of those 2 will be magnificent, and the rest you wish to God you'd never seen them. So there's a huge variation. Guidelines are not complex, they're very simplistic, if anything. Maxi cards are not easy to judge, probably because juries don't get experience often enough. And that's the guts of it. You just don't see them enough. So it's hard to get experience. So don't be hung up if you find it difficult. The guidelines talk about definition and nature. Now, picture postcards only, postcards on the picture side, and pencil stamps tying the stamp to the card. You hopefully will never see, for instance, a picture of King George V on a card with a view of Adelaide or Brisbane. That's not a Maxi. Well, I've seen people do it. And if you collect postal history of countries, you often find stamps postmarked or attached to the picture side and postmarked. They're not Maxi cards. You get hung up that they're okay. These are restrictions. You can have a postal stamp approved by the UPU. So technically, I1 stamps can't be shown. Postal stationery cutouts, if they're approved by the UPU or the Postal Administration, but I don't know of any country that's ever approved the use of postal stationery cutouts. They have not penalised people who've used them, but that doesn't mean they're permitted. So avoid any card that's got a cutout stuck on it. Apart from some early restrictions on modern stamps, one stamp, one card. Later in this treatment, I'll show you a page with 3 stamps. Prior to a certain date, yes, but I would avoid it for the same reason that I say don't get hung up. Every time if someone exhibits Maxi, they're likely to get a different judge. So they're not getting anybody with experience. And people who are inexperienced, with great respect, tend to be heavy because they don't know. So they don't want to give him a gold medal when they say that it's worth a bronze. It's better when you display never to show 3 unless you're absolutely certain it'll be accepted. The stamp size is not to exceed 1/4 of the card. Now, sometimes we see Maxi cards in inverted commas where the picture is almost not much bigger than the stamp. They're not allowed. And frame labels or such are permitted, but not counter labels. So keep that in mind. Personalised postage stamps, provided the postage stamp image concords with the card image. So it's not a picture of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on a card of Anthony Albanese. It's what the postage stamp says. That in mind. And mostly I would expect the personalised stamp would be a no-no because there's very little correlation between the personalised aspect and the definitive issue, or that you take Australia Post. Maybe a birthday girl, you type one of the birthday cards, yes, but be careful. These are not permitted. Basic stamps, revenue stamps. Now, there's some confusion because, as you know, revenue stamps are now permitted in thematics in certain cases, but they're not permitted in Maxi because you can't use a revenue stamp to post a letter or a card. However, you can use a stamp with postage and revenue because it's got a dual purpose. Pre-cancelled stamps is an American thing, of course, so you won't see it too often, but you can sometimes think of it in German and Italian. Again, it's a little bit like thematics. The principal purpose was the original design, not the pre-cancel, and that's why you can't use them. I'll jump the next one and go to official stamps. They're not allowed. Online printed stamps. The last one I think needs to be changed, but I suspect they'll open the floodgates, so that may take another 10 years. I go back to stamps issued contrary to UPU Code of Ethics. That would be a nightmare. I can tell you now, I doubt that any good judge would even know what that is. I've read them because, as some of you may know, I was a consultant with UPU for many years. Legal background, of course, I looked at all that sort of stuff. My view is you only look at places like Burkina Faso, Solomon Islands, recent issues that have never been to Solomon Islands. Just use your common sense. They're what we used to call jam labels. They've never been to the country that they're issued on, so they're the ones you need to be wary of. Some of you, if you've been to international shows, you've seen a stand where they've got all sorts of high price. And most of those are printed by a company in Lithuania called Stamparija, and it's total rubbish. When you go to the next show, have a look at Stamparija, go through their stock. That will give you an idea of what's crap and what you cannot have on a Maxi card. Cancellation. Now, the cancellation must be printed by the post office. These are the guidelines I've got here, and normally I wouldn't show this to you because it's an area where you've probably never seen it before. I've done. Make sure the cancel matches the stamp and the card. There's got to be concordance between the 3. They talk about the closer connection. So if you're having a stamp with the koala, and the koala is in a map of Australia down in the left-hand corner of where Perth is, And we've got kookaburras and wallabies and emus and dingoes all over the rest of it. It's not a good concordance. Concordance should be something very obvious. You should have to use an arrow to find it. It's got to be cancelled within the validity period. So if a stamp was issued in 2020, you can't use it in 2025 if it's no longer on issue or available. The date and the name of the post office must have a correlation. Queensland Parliament House card postmarked in Sydney is not a Maxi card. The cancel must be clear. You must be able to read the cancel and the date. Now, frequently, this is the major error of exhibitors, particularly with the bad lighting in many venues. You cannot read the date and you cannot even read the name of the town. Fortunately, that means it's a no-no. And Australia Post some time ago tried to get around this for a few years, where they put a white background behind where the stamp was to go, so you could see the cancel. And unfortunately, I had to tell them politely that that would not be a Maxi card. So beware, many of the Australian Maxi cards issued by Australia Post regrettably are not Maxi cards. The postcard. So it's got to be typical, normal picture postcard size. You can't reduce them, can't chop this off. Postcards that are just reproducing the postage stamp are not Maxi cards. Now, you probably know that these are different by Bahamas and Bermuda. The most common ones are what is called the English PHQ card. I couldn't find one because I think I've probably thrown most of them away, but they're just a reproduction of the stamp. You can't do that. The design of the card will be the same topic or theme as the stamp, but not identical. And I'll show you some of those further down. Now, you can't get a 1910 postcard and stick a 2020 stamp on it. That's not permitted. You'll see it, but it's not permitted. You get one in an exhibit, you'd forgive it, but after that, no. Postcards with multiple pictures or holograms are not permitted. So keep that in mind, cutouts and all that sort of collages. There's no place in Maxi. They're a bit tougher than the picture postcard. Types of exhibits, but majority are the theme. Like seeking or flowers or dogs. Rarely seen one, in fact I can't remember, which is on a issue unless it's something in Europe, but the problem is it's very hard. So it's possible, but I doubt you'll ever see one. So they're mainly thematics format. Introductory page is no different to any of the others, okay? Put things in chapters or sections and pages, no frame numbers, no frame 1, frame 2, none of that. So it's identical to thematics, identical to picture postcards. But I won't go into a lot of scope and all that now. David spoke about rarity earlier, and you would have seen one exhibit where I was a bit anxious because it really didn't describe what they meant by rarity. Now, you need to highlight what the rarity is. I think also you need to look at an exhibit and where it says rare, I think sometimes the exhibitor should be saying why it's rare because it isn't apparent on the face of it. If it's rare because there's only 2 known, that's easy to understand, but if it's rare for some other reason, which David touched on, which maybe done by this particular thing, that's what you need to, the exhibitor needs to add a little bit. Don't overdo it, but you need to add something. There's one, I'm sure all your French speakers will read this quicker than me. But there's one that's got pages. I think the pages are a bit overdone. I do P with 2-12, etc. But there's an indication of how it should be done. I can't comment on the at the top because I haven't looked at. I should have brushed up on French being the games being on, but I haven't. That one's more simplistic. You'll notice that generally speaking, Maxi card title pages don't go into the 2 pages that Philatelic does. Not to say you can't, but just keep in mind that this seems to be the way they're doing it. You'll notice this guy is better with the pages. It's much easier, not heavy in the labelling of the writing. You just put the page and the number. Now, apologies about the quality. A very good and well-known Australian philatelist sent pictures at my request in Firo recently. The problem is none of them come out too good, so they were pointless in showing them. So I trawled the internet now. What you'll find is in a group of exhibits on the internet showing postal history, there'll be 20 or 40. Thematic, there'll be 20. And Maxi, there'll be 1. So there's not much guidance for people to unfortunately. Here's another one. The Maxi exhibit's pretty hopeless, but I popped this up to show you. This is someone who's done a 1-framer. Now, 1-framer on Maxi, I think, are a nightmare. It's like 1 frame of thematics. Most topics go to 5 to 8 frames or 20. You struggle to put it on 1. This is wildcats. Well, you know, that means tigers, panthers, cheetahs, pumas. You know, you can do 20 frames of it. It's not a suitable one for 1 frame. You've got 1 page, 8 pages, 7 pages. Again, it's not a good plan because it's not a plan, it's just a list of pages. So, you know, you really need to ensure that he's following what's the plan. And now, one thing he has got here, and I'll show it again later, he shows you what he's showing. Iberian tiger, the special postmark, the place and the date, right? And they're the things that you need to show in an exhibit about it. The points are almost identical. Unlike thematics, the guideline and postal and picture postcards, these guidelines do not show a breakup. I do 20 and 15, but they just don't show a breakup. So keep that in mind, all right? But other than that, it does have importance, which is bizarre, I think, but I don't know how you do it because I've never done it, but it's in the new guidelines. I have to be honest, I'm the Australian delegate to Maxi, and I was once on the Bureau, but the collectors themselves are not generally philatelists. They're hobbyists who often make their own cards. So how you pick the thematic and related knowledge obviously has a lot to do with your thought processes. And you know a good one when you see it. It's like anything else. The hardest thing to judge is the ones that aren't good. Okay, treatment is the development of the subject. This is so similar to picture postcards, it's amazing. It's logical, completeness, clear, right, balanced. I'm not teaching anything new here. I'll check it's got an introductory page, states the purpose, defines the scope, has a plan, and gives the most important literature references. Those references will be of a thematic nature. They won't be on a postcard nature, but that's possible. Now, here's some examples that I spoke to you about before. Beside each card, it gives the detail of the card, the stamp, and the postmark. Worry about it on the right if you've got the screen with your faces coming down. But that's quite a balanced little exhibit. You see that? There's no railroad tracks, and except on this exhibit, you haven't seen all of it. Every page is generally vertical and horizontal. It's not a balanced exhibit. 1, 2 pages look good, but when you go further, it's not. Now, I spoke to you before about more than one stamp, and you'll see the Australian one there. That would be with Marjorie Jackson. That normally would not be permitted, but if you had one like that, you'd get away with one. 2 or 3 times you'd be in the shit. All right, this is the same exhibit as I showed you before. I couldn't find what metal it's got, but it probably has had a large vermeil, but I'm not sure it's had a gold. I doubt it. There's some aeroplanes. Now you see the problem here, all this white space. That indicates to me that it's not well balanced. It does do little boxes which help give us a balance. We've got good headings, so you know you wouldn't be over penalising this bloke. It's very hard for these reproductions to see the postmarks, but they seem to be, to me, to be all in concordance. That's the one I showed you before that I've reproduced on the left. You wouldn't need the bit at the bottom about the category endangered, but it may be you do that if you had within the exhibit a special category of, you know, certain types of endangered species. But this is the tiger one, but at least he's got all the concepts right. He's followed, but it's, again, you wouldn't be having the same thing at the top of every page. Maximaphily, big cats. Again, many of the concepts you have from watching to all the previous consistency. 6 years ago, Lars Engelbeck and I, Lars used to be the president of the Postal Stationery Commission, quite a gifted philatelist. He and I tried to get all of the commissions to have uniformity right across their guidelines. We didn't give up, it just didn't work. We just couldn't get people together to agree together, unfortunately. So whilst some of them, such as traditional and postal stationery, got together, because the presidents were both Danish, they worked, but that's where it didn't work. Probably the worst one, that one, Mrs. Brom's getting upset, is the matrix, which really ended up with guidelines that go on and on and on and on and on. And instead of helping people, it pushed them away. So
we're rewriting them, Bernie. We're rewriting them.
Yeah, no, but at least, you know, if you're a good reader, you can do it. Now, philatelic knowledge, it really depends what you write more than anything else, so it's different. It's hard to do philatelic research, but I'm sure it's there. God himself will tell the story. It's like anything else too. Early rare cards will help you both in philatelic knowledge and in rarity. I penalised and I have judged Maxi probably more than a lot of one of the annoying things is some of these so-called gold medals were not gold medal because they'd used postal stationery for their early Maxi cards. So some exhibitors didn't like me very much. Wouldn't overwhelm the philatelic aspect. No big lengths. And the rest is self-explanatory. So there's the concordance between the stamp, subject, and of course the place. As I said before, you don't have a Sydney cancelling a Queensland Parliament House. So when you look at the guidelines, and I recommend you do, just be wary. Some of the English is pretty wobbly. Pretty sure the current president is a Frenchman, Pascal Landry. The original guidelines were written in French. So the translation into English leaves a lot to be desired. I know that the court being a Catholic, but often a lot of our stuff and prayers are gobbledygook in English. They might make sense in Italian. Got the same problem here. Read the guidelines because they do give you some better idea. It also means that when an exhibitor comes and challenges you about what you've done, if you know the guidelines and they're damn sure that the exhibitor won't, unfortunately most exhibitors don't read guidelines, but you'll notice you'll be able to explain this is why and explain yourself, so don't be worried about Concordance with place, that's too long-winded, but it gives you an idea of all the little things, you know. First day covers are frowned on, first day cancelled, and unfortunately a lot of maxi cards in Australia are first day. So if you have a whole lot of those, it would go down. There has got to be that concordance of place and card, and sometimes it's not always easy to understand. Concordance of place is also, there's a huge lot of stuff here, but they talk about paintings. Now this is where you'll find some cards that are not suitable. I couldn't find one to display, unfortunately, but for instance, if Tahiti show a picture of painting in the Louvre, it really has nothing to do with Tahiti. So a Tahitian stamp on the Louvre postcard is going to be from France. So be very wary of some of those types of maxi cards because they're not good maxi cards. They're a maxi card, but they're not a good one. Most of the same thing. You know, you have to be wary, but also with maxi card concordance of postmark. A postmark just by sound is okay. Postmark that really ties into the card, lifts the exhibit, and that's part of the philatelic offers you're going to get. Again, it's got to be within the validity. And a lot of people find that it's not. They find a nice card that's 20 years old and they make it with this thing. Best possible condition, David Baker, not some length, but shortly had bent cards and damaged cards and that sort of stuff. And yes, they're going to go down. Presentation, avoid using coloured paper. The railroad tracks, anything that's just railroad tracks is going to lose. 2 cards per page. I think if you do 1 card per page, you're in trouble. And avoid 2 empty and 2 crowded pages, and avoid overlapping pages. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice. Every page has the cards overlapped. The exhibit should be down marked. Now, here's some ones that are quite good. The one at the right, unfortunately, you mightn't be able to see properly. So the one on the left, that's the New Caledonia. Postmark is fine. It's hard to read from here. Reproduction, that's the post office. So there's nothing wrong with that. On the right, you have some children, and it's that postmark. It's got a stamp with children. There's more than 4 in the picture. There's 5 in the stamp, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's good examples. 2 that I pulled out of my box. One is Vietnam. Excellent. The other one is Brussels. You can see lots of these sort of things. So see the design is the same, but certainly not the same as the stamp. And the same with the one from Vietnam. The other space on the left where Tiger Post made that white thing, not covering up the card. The bird on the right, the reason that's there, if you can see the whole of the card, you'll see that the stamp is just identical to the card. Not good match. Okay. These 2 really bad ones. Stamp is the same as the image. And to make it worse, the one the postmark is exactly the same as well. That's wonderful, but it's not. The one on the right, yes, the colours are different, but that's about all. Other than the reproduction of the stamp. Most people market it as maxi cards. Mostly by the post office who don't understand the concept. For instance, I know that cards are frequently coming out of Emirates, Jordan, different things postcards. They don't realise that to collect as a postcard, but the stamp really is no big deal unless it's postage station. I'm going to do a little bit on feedback because I think it's important. I know it's been covered already, but it might be covered again later, but this will complete it. Where does feedback start? I think we all know the answer. Your research. You've got to know what you're talking about. If you're going to talk to an exhibitor who's probably spent 2 weeks, minimum 2 months or more putting it together. That's not always easy. If you live in the bush as I do in Bundaberg, you can't go to the local Philatelic library. There isn't one. Go to the local public library, unless you're interested in James Patterson or some other modern novelist, you won't find anything to help you in research, not even in fact. We had one of those Rotary book sales recently, only a week ago. I was seeing what I could find on Philatelic. There was nothing. And 90% of the novels were ex-library at the local library. So, and I tell you, and I don't want anybody getting upset, but unfortunately we don't have really good the Brisbane one's hopeless. Sydney will be good when it gets back in the shelves. And Melbourne is pretty good, but after that, there's not a lot. South Australia's got a fair bit, but you need a key to get in every night. So there's a variety of whatever. And everything you're looking for is not always in a book. As I say, what you can also do though is look in the internet. Auction houses. Some people like Argyle Etkin, even Abacus, probably American one, Jerry Stone, have an archive of what's been put up. And sometimes if you're looking for a topic, it's in there. The other thing is when you're going to a show and you've seen the title pages and you know what, if there's 2 Maxis there, you have a look up. You look up eBay and hip stamps and things. You may find some of the types of cards you're looking for. When you get to the exhibition, you may find he hasn't got those. He hasn't got those in their exhibit. So you're not really then at the level of what's about and what's in the exhibit. So it's a big help. And you use that for any class. Always address the exhibit, not the exhibitor. We all fail there. Don't pick on irrelevant things like front sizes or backing details. I've had so much of that. I know in New Zealand I got criticised for having a big little background. It wasn't good, but they still gave me 5 for presentation. I had the same thing in Macau. Presentation is postal stationery, and the vice president of the jury came over and said, but it's too crowded. I said, well, why did they give me 5 for presentation? Oh, did they? Oh, I haven't seen the marks. So, you know, you always don't pick little silly things that make no difference to an exhibit. Do offer constructive suggestions. Avoid arguments. Now, I judged an exhibit once for postal stationery. And the exhibitor was extremely upset, and that's probably putting it mildly. It's so bad that his wife came to me that night at dinner and apologised profusely and brought me a wine because she said her husband was over the top. His argument was that he didn't have the usage because it doesn't exist. Okay. 2 years later, I saw the exhibit in Chile, the same exhibit, full of usages. I said, oh, I see you took my advice. Oh, yes, well, you know, John Smith died and I was able to buy it. But I said, you told me it didn't exist. Well, it didn't exist in the market. Well, so always very wary. I didn't argue with him, but at the end of the day, we're still mates. And unfortunately, when you're judging exhibits, mates are the worst and giving you a hard time. Sorry about that. Praise the exhibitor, encourage the exhibitor. The other thing is, listen, we're all guilty of that. I could tell a sexist joke, but definitely Indonesia here, so I probably can't. But, you know, it's about the woman who went to buy a parrot. And the pet shop said, oh, this is a brilliant parrot. He talks non-stop all day. You know, you'll love him. He takes him home. Always love him, take the parrot back to the shop. I want my money back. And he said, why? She said, this bloody parrot, I've waited 2 weeks, he hasn't said a thing. So he looked at the parrot, and the parrot said, I haven't had a chance to get a word in. So listen, all right? It helps. Thank you for your opinion. How do I get up this? No, on the screen, just press again.
Yeah,
Yep.
you've done well.
It wasn't the name.
And then there should be a stop sharing button there, Bernie. So thank you very much for that presentation. Maxi, it's not a lot of volunteers to give that presentation. I'm going to ask for questions, but before, I just want to ask one question, Bernie. So I can produce a Maxi card. So I can get a postcard. I can get a stamp that meets the concordance with that postcard. I can get a pictorial mark that relates to that, and I'll make this Maxi card. Now, I know that I've made 3 and no one else has made any. So with the concordance, is that rare? But I mean, the postcard may be 100,000 produced. There's probably first day covers with that postmark on, and there's probably 1 million stamps. So can I class it as rare, saying only one of 3 known?
My view would be yes. Then you write that underneath. And on the page 1, you would refer to red, highlighted in red or with a green dot or whatever, right? But certainly you can, because it's very limited. And if you look at the European exhibits, some of them will say 20% of the cards were made by the exhibitor.
Yeah. All right. Is there anyone else that wants a question to Bernie on Maximaphily? Sounds like you've given an excellent presentation, Bernie. So I'm going to just stop recording now and then open it up for people to ask questions about anything.